Governor Bush, I'll start with you. Many Republicans have been outraged recently by a series of videos on Planned Parenthood. You now say that you support ending federal funding for this organization. However, until late 2014, right before you started your campaign, you sat on the board of a Bloomberg charity that quite publicly gave tens of millions of dollars to Planned Parenthood while you were a director. How could you not know about these well-publicized donations? And if you did know, how could you help a charity so openly committed to abortion rights?
I joined the Bloomberg Foundation because of Mike Bloomberg's shared commitment for meaningful education reform. That's why I was on it. We never had a debate about the budget. It was presented and we approved it, not item by item. Here's my record. As governor of the state of Florida, I defunded Planned Parenthood. I created a culture of life in our state. We were the only state to appropriate money for crisis pregnancy centers. We expanded dramatically the number of adoptions out of our foster care system. We did parental notification laws. We ended partial birth abortion. We did all of this, and we were the first state to do a Choose Life license plate. Now 29 states have done it, and tens of millions of dollars have gone to create a culture where more babies are adopted.
But did you know?
No, I didn't know, but it doesn't matter. I was working on this board because of the education. My record is clear. My record as a pro-life governor is not in dispute. I am completely pro-life, and I believe that we should have a culture of life. It's informed by my faith from beginning to end. And I did this not just as it related to unborn babies. I did it at the end-of-life issues as well. This is something that goes way beyond politics. And I hope one day that we get to the point where we respect life in its fullest form across the board.
Governor Walker, you've consistently said that you want to make abortion illegal, even in cases of rape, incest, or to save the life of the mother. You recently signed an abortion law in Wisconsin that does have an exception for the mother's life, but you are on record as having objected to it. Would you really let a mother die rather than have an abortion? And with 83% of the American public in favor of a life exception, are you two out of the mainstream on this issue to win the general election?
Well, I'm pro-life. I've always been pro-life. And I've got a position I think is consistent with many Americans out there in that I believe that is an unborn child that's in need of protection out there. And I've said many a time that unborn child can be protected, and there are many other alternatives that will also protect the life of that mother. That's been consistently proven. Unlike Hillary Clinton, who has a radical position in terms of support for Planned Parenthood, I defunded Planned Parenthood more than 4 years ago, long before any of these videos came out. I've got a position that's in line with everyday America.
Governor Huckabee, like Governor Walker, you have staked out strong positions on social issues. You favor a constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriages. You favor a constitutional amendment banning abortions, except for the life of the mother. Millions of people in this country agree with you, but according to the polls, and again, this is an electability question, according to the polls, more people don't. So how do you persuade enough independents and Democrats to get elected in 2016?
Chris, I disagree with the idea that the real issue is a constitutional amendment. That's a long and difficult process. I've actually taken a position that's bolder than that. A lot of people are talking about defunding Planned Parenthood as if that's a huge game changer. I think it's time to do something even more bold. I think the next president ought to invoke the 5th and 14th Amendments to the Constitution, now that we clearly know that baby inside the mother's womb is a person at the moment of conception. The reason we know that it is because of the DNA schedule that we now have clear scientific evidence on. And this notion that we just continue to ignore the personhood of the individual is a violation of that unborn child's 5th and 14th Amendment rights for due process and equal protection under the law. It's time that we recognize the Supreme Court is not the supreme being, and we change the policy to be pro-life and protect children instead of rip up their body parts and sell them like they're parts to a Buick.
Senator Rubio, you favor a rape and incest exception to abortion bans. Cardinal Timothy Dolan of New York just said yesterday those exceptions are preposterous. He said they discriminate against an entire class of human beings. If you believe that life begins at conception, as you say you do, how do you justify ending a life just because it begins violently through no fault of the baby?
Well, Megan, first of all, I'm not sure that that's a correct assessment of my record. I would go on to add that I believe all
You don't favor a rape and an incest
I
exception.
have never said that, and I have never advocated that. What I have advocated is that we pass a law in this country that says all human life at every stage of its development is worthy of protection. In fact, I think that law already exists. It's called the Constitution of the United States. And let me go further. I believe that every single human being is entitled to the protection of our laws, whether they can vote or not, whether they can speak or not, whether they can hire a lawyer or not, whether they have a birth certificate or not. And I think future generations will look back at this history of our country and call us barbarians for murdering millions of babies who we never gave them a chance to live.
Governor Jindal, Carly Fiorina, also on the stage, said that she would go so far as to shut down the government over the issue of defunding Planned Parenthood. Would you do that? Would you be willing to shut down the government when it comes to defunding this group?
Well, a couple of things. Planned Parenthood had better hope that Hillary Clinton wins this election. Because I guarantee you, under President Jindal, January 2017, the Department of Justice and the IRS and everybody else that we can send from the federal government will be going into Planned Parenthood. This is absolutely disgusting and revolts the conscience of the nation. Absolutely, we need to defund Planned Parenthood. In my own state, for example, we launched an investigation, asked the FBI to cooperate. We just earlier this week kicked them out of Medicaid in Louisiana as well, canceled their provider contract. They don't provide any abortions in Louisiana. But in terms of shutting down the government, I don't think President Obama should choose to shut down the government simply to send taxpayer dollars to this group that has been caught, I believe, breaking the law, but also offending our values and our ethics. Martha, it is time for Republicans in D.C. to fight. Too often they give up, they negotiate with themselves. They said they would get rid of the unconstitutional amnesty. They didn't do that. They said they would repeal Obamacare if we gave them the majority. They didn't do that either. They said they'd shrink and balance the budget. They haven't done that. Absolutely, they should fight to defund Planned Parenthood. And I don't think the president should shut down the government simply to send our taxpayer dollars to this group.
All right, Lindsey Graham, this conversation will no doubt go to the war on women. And that cutting funding to this group could be a very broad brush against all of you or anybody who holds this nomination as being against women's health, against these organizations that people will say provide positive things for many women.
I don't think it's a war on women for all of us as Americans to stand up and stop harvesting organs from little babies. Let's take the money that we would give to Planned Parenthood and put it in women's health care without having to harvest the organs of the unborn. The only way we're going to defund Planned Parenthood is to have a pro-life president. You want to see a war on women? Come with me to Iraq and Afghanistan, folks. I've been there 35 times. I'll show you what they do to women. These mythical Arab armies that my friends talk about that are going to protect us don't exist. If I am president of the United States, we're going to send soldiers back to Iraq, back to Syria to keep us from being attacked here and keep soldiers in Afghanistan because we must. I cannot tell you how much our nation is threatened and how we need a commander-in-chief who understands the threats to this nation. If you're running for president of the United States and you do not understand that we cannot defend this nation without more of our soldiers over there, you're not ready for this job.
Governor Gilmore, for years, presidential candidates have not said they would have a litmus test for justices nominated to the Supreme Court. Recently, Hillary Clinton broke that precedent. She said she would apply that on the case of Citizens United, which deals with campaign finance laws in America today. Is it time for conservatives to impose a litmus test on abortion?
Well, as you know, I'm a former elected prosecutor, a former elected attorney general, trained at the University of Virginia in constitutional law. And I don't believe in litmus tests except this. I believe we should be appointing Supreme Court justices who will follow the law and not try to make the law. Now, the challenge we're seeing today is that the Supreme Court is being converted into some type of political body. They have to have some legal basis and precedence for being able to follow the law instead of making the law up. And my goal, as in appointing Supreme Court justices, would be to appoint justices who would follow the law. Bill, I want to say one more thing about
no litmus test.
Not on that, no. But let me say one more thing. I want to, before my time runs out, I want to get back to this issue of ISIS versus Iran. It is Iran that's the expansionist power. ISIL is trying to create themselves into a new state. Our job has to be to recognize the conflict between the two. I have proposed there be a Middle East NATO so that we can combine our allies there to stand up to Iranian expansion and at the same time join together to begin to stop in this ISIL thing before it becomes an actual state. Thank you.
We want to get back to Planned Parenthood, and this question goes to Governor Pataki. Governor Pataki, you're the only pro-choice candidate running. A Republican holding that position has not won a single primary in 35 years. With the recent Planned Parenthood videos that we have all seen, shedding new light on abortion practices, I know that you have said that you would defund Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
But has this story changed your heart?
My heart has not changed because I've always been appalled by abortion. I'm a Catholic. I believe life begins at conception. But as Bill said earlier, Roe v. Wade has been the law for 42 years, and I don't think we should continue to try to change it. But what we can do is defund Planned Parenthood. And by the way, put in place an absolute permanent ban on any taxpayer dollars ever being used to fund abortions. Also, when you look at these videos, they are horrific and show just a hideous disrespect for life. What else we can do is that we should believe in science. You know, Hillary Clinton's always saying how Republicans don't follow science. Well, they're the ones not listening to the scientists today, because doctors say that at 20 weeks, that is a viable life inside the womb. And at that point, it's a life that we have the right to protect, and I think we should protect. So I would pass legislation outlawing abortion after 20 weeks. It is Hillary, it is Biden, it is the others who insist on allowing abortion well into the life of a viable infant that is wrong and that should be stopped.